Yeah, it's fun. What would it be like without MIDIBox? With MIDIBox. Yeah, okay. So I guess we should talk about that today. Okay. Hi, welcome to a new video. My name is John Skippy Lim. Cool. Hands together, head bowed. Welcome. Hey, so I don't know if you know about this, but you should know about this. So there is a Facebook group called the Plugin Guru Unify Power Users that I started. And we've got a good number of users. That's funny. And I asked the question today, what video I should make. And overwhelmingly, a video covering MIDIBox has been the request. So we're doing a video on MIDIBox and JitterBox because they are both super cool and do a lot of very cool things in different ways with different applications, even inside of Unify. Also, you should know that there is a forum. The forums.pluginguru.com is a place to come ask questions, share information. There's all sorts of stuff going on there, so communicate away. If you want to know about Unify, these libraries I'm showing, all that information and all these libraries are available at pluginguru.com. There's like over 80 libraries. Unify is at 1.3. The DiscoverStation Library is what I'm playing. So I'm going to give you a parameter by parameter breakdown of MIDIBox and JitterBox. Let's get JitterBox over here. Let's get MIDIBox over here. And let's see, go like that and then like this. These are our two MIDI effects that these actually were free updated MIDI effects that didn't exist with Unify 1.0. We've added these in the last year along with Polybox, which is another unique MIDI effect because these three effects allow you to do really cool things with all of your plugins. I've thought about adding other synths or effects and stuff like that. But this is to me, this is more what Unify stands for because we make your plugins better. Make them able to do things that you can't do without. I mean, that's really what Unify is all about. So MIDIBox allows you to take this and make it. Unify lets you take the BBC Symphony Orchestra plugin that we're playing. I can now play the basses, cellos, violas, violin 2, violin 1. Normally when you call up the BBC Symphony Orchestra and you call up, here we have just one of the instances, just the violins 1, they stop. And we have a bit of a fade because we have it going into the violas. And then this fades down into the cellos. And then down here, the basses. So we can play the whole orchestra. This is something you can't do with the BBC Symphony Orchestra. You can't do this with a lot of the orchestral plugins out there. They only give you specific instruments to play at a time, only in their specific range. So this opens up that door to let you do things. Like Spitfire has a new library where they've put all the samples across the keyboard so you can play it in real time, but it's baked into the samples. So you can't go over here and change the mix of something. You can't do something to EQ the cello in a different way. You can't add different ambience to the violas. You can do that in Unify, whereas if it's baked into the samples, you can't do that. So we let you do some pretty cool things over here, right? So MIDIBox. This is a MIDI effect player, which means it plays MIDI files. You can make your own MIDI files, which we will do so in a minute. And then you have parameters here that let you modify the MIDI data so that it can do some interesting things. You have lead lag, which in order to show this, I should get a drum groove. So let's go to Cloud City. Go down here to drums. I'm going to right click and say load into Unify with no pitch shift. We'll come back to that in a minute. So this is a drum groove. I'm going to turn on the master effects a little sweeter. And I used one of the parameters that we're going to talk about is this note to chorus. For this drum groove, if this was on, the drums are changing pitch. Play up here, hide the keyboard. Down low. And if you play chords, it's weird, right? If you set to normal middle C and then turn that off, it doesn't change pitch anymore. So this is one of the parameters in MIDIBox. It's only to Guru Sampler. That's why it's under this little header that says Guru Sampler. So I'm going to show you the lead lag on the strings, because check this out. We're going to play. You hear the strings are a little late. Better. Right? Now, there's currently an issue that we're working on. Once you start going earlier than the 0.0, you're going into negative time. And we have to think a little bit about how we're going to handle this. The notes sometimes don't play in your DAW when you go to this. This will be fixed in the next update. We're going to release past 1.3.2, but we're still working on this to figure out exactly how we want to do that, because it gets tricky once you get, when you play notes, even if the delay is set to like 130 milliseconds, the first notes you play are right on the downbeat, because we can't go earlier than time than when you play. But notes after that are all shifted timing wise. So it's a little tricky. We're still working on it. We will have that solved very shortly with the next update. Going the other way is later. So if you're doing stuff with drums and you have a clap, here's a really cool way to just push the clap a little bit later to make it more laid back. Okay. This is to choose what library you're going to be looking at. And then when you click delete and load, it will open and show you that library, which is really handy. From bar, for bar are describing if you got to do it this way. I want you to play from bar 1 for 2 bars. If you said to play from bar 2 for 1 bar, then it's going to start here at measure 2 and just cycle that. It won't let you get back to measure 1 because you said, nope, you're only going to play from 1 bar to 1 measure. So it could put that to from bar 1 for 2 bars. If it's 4 measures, then you want to change this to be for 4 bars, okay? Over here are MIDI filters. So I want to go into the 1-finger orchestra that Jeff did, and I'm going to load up a stack of 7/8 grooves, which will be really interesting with a 4/4 drum groove. You can still play it in 4. Right? Okay. So it still works, even though it's in 7/8 time. Because we have something here I want to show you. That's this. By loading a stack, that's a type 0 MIDI file. If you, inside of Logic, if you stack up a whole bunch of different MIDI files, all on the same, starting at measure 1, but using multiple tracks, you can export it as a type 0 MIDI file. And by doing that, inside of Unify, it shows up with multiple tracks to play. And if you come over here into our knobs, the macro knobs, we can set up, let's say over here, if you say link parameters, we can go over here to instrument 1, MIDI effect, MIDIBox, track number. And by doing this, as I change this, you can see it changing the track from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I can now change between different MIDI files with a knob, which is really, really fun. Very, very cool. So that stack, this becomes more interesting and usable in this situation once you're working with stacks. If you don't have stacks, which is fine, let's just say 1. Then these plus buttons let you change, right? So you can audition as you're going down a list of MIDI file drum grooves, for example, or something like that. Now, we showed you the guru sampler on the drum groove, how it would transpose. This is MIDI pass-through filters. So if I turn on notes, I'm playing my left hand as fast as I can play the MIDI file up here. Now, because the pass-through, I can play it. Whenever I want. If I turn this off, I can't. I can, but it will only play notes when you play notes, and MIDI notes are supposed to be played from the MIDI file. Then you hear the notes. I'm trying to bounce up and down and nothing's happening. Here it is. So that's a really handy one to know about. Pitch bend, these plugins don't have pitch bend, but if you did have pitch bend, that would pass it through. All CCs you want to enable. If you want to do expression with MIDI CC1 and MIDI CC11, you need to turn on the all CCs. That allows MIDI CCs to pass through. You basically have to think of MIDIBox as this wall. And anything before it is only just going to trigger it to start in most cases. We've made it smarter by watching what notes you play to transpose and so forth. These allow things to be passed through that wall. Otherwise, it just is going to ignore your MIDI CCs. If I turn this off, I can move my MIDI CCs all I want. Doesn't do anything. So turning this on, and they work, okay? Down here you have some settings for the root and for transpose and the type of mode that is used. These are important depending on how you're going to use MIDIBox. If you're doing a drum groove, you'll notice for this one, I have it set to play only, because that way, anytime I play a note, it just starts playing it. If I set this to play and transpose, each time it's transposing this MIDI file up and down, it's playing a different set of drum samples from this drum kit. I've got drums all the way across the keyboard. Oh yeah. Now, if one of those catches your attention, I like that. That'd be kind of fun. All I need to do is go play only. I can use offset to transpose the whole map back to that note. And now wherever I play on the keyboard, it's playing that for the groove. So other cases to use transpose, let's see, I'll show you another example of transpose. Let's mute the drums for a minute. We have MIDIBox playing, right? Let's duplicate this just by going duplicate. Now we have 2 of the strings, and I'm gonna go to the second one for MIDIBox. Let's have it be a +7, so it's a 5th. Right? So transpose is fun to do things. You can actually assign this to a knob. Okay? So you can do all sorts of fun stuff like that, because we're gonna play with speed and velocity. So this other layer that's at +7 for a fifth, this weird spidery play the velocity. All sorts of fun experimental things can be done here. You can assign a knob that's doing velocity and speed at the same time. So what we have here, let's double click to get everything to normal. And we have speed controls over here that are both a knob up to 500%. It will kill the polyphony of your computer. I can guarantee you it will poop out. You can be shooting out hundreds of notes of polyphony in a second if you want. You also have percentage rates. So I could say 4 times into 1, so it's 4 times faster. Assign this to a knob. You can make your own Shostakovich just like that. Right? So all sorts of fun possibilities with transpose offsets, and the speed. Numerator denominators are fun for if you're going to take, let's say, the drums. Let's mute the strings. Let's say duplicate and go to this MIDI box, and let's make it be like some crazy rhythm like 2 out of 5. And then offset. And then speed at 150%. Let's say 8 out of 5. And bring down velocity. It can do it. It will do the math to figure out. You can do all sorts of crazy fractional stuff. Really, really fun. 1-to-1 is normal, but I have it at 150%. Like I said, if you do 500%, it's fast. Like, let's get both of these guys up to 500%. So you can hear a drum groove. And then one of them to 16 times 500%. And then let's have that shift. It can do all sorts of crazy stuff. It will actually make MIDI notes become an oscillator. So you could use that as a sound source for synthesis. Very, very fun. So the speed controls let you do things in mathematical exactness or as a knob so you can vary the speed. Okay, so you get the idea on speed. I'm gonna show you this with strings really quick too. Oh, let's get our drum grooves to be at a normal speed. 100%. And let's get rid of the other one so it's just. I can tell that I have that transpose feature turned on. Turn it off, and now the drums don't transpose. When you're going to load a patch into a new Unify layer, that's why there's 2 options. This load no pitch shift means that it turns off the pitch shift parameter. It's specifically for loading drums. So you can load any drum groove in Cloud City, say no pitch shift, and that way it loads. It it doesn't transpose pitch. This is skip new swing. Now, if I was to go to skips new swing and I was to load this the other way, just into a Unify layer, transpose it up and down low, it transposed it down in pitch. That's why there's two different loading options for Unify into a new layer. One is to turn off that pitch shift. So when I'm doing things, I'm always going no pitch shift. Then I can just play. My drum groove doesn't change. Okay, so that's why we have those two loading options, is because of this parameter in MIDIBox. Note pitch shift, the note course, that's what you can enable to not load no pitch shift, means no note course is loaded, okay? So that's really handy. Keeping our list going here, the last thing is including and excluding. This can be to change to exclude instead of include. And this is really great on drums. So let's load back up a drummer. Okay. Let's go to MIDIBox. Now the first is the include notes. Say I don't want to have that sub kick, the 808. Just take the low note range up and I'll get to a point. There it is, it's on B. If I go to C2, sub is gone because we're only including notes in this range. If I was to bring this down to something really low like here, that's just the kick, the tight kick and the snare. If I wanted, I could assign these parameters. They're available as knobs. Let's go to the second page, go link parameters, go instrument, MIDI effect, MIDIBox. Right here is minimum and maximum note output range. So the max note, let's have it start where it is, which is G3 or 63. And then as you bring this up, it's right there, 99. So this way, when it's down, no hi-hat, and then up. Now, because I'm playing a Unify inside of a layer of a Unify patch, I've assigned this to knob 16, macro 16. If I want to change this in real time, automation-wise, I have to go to my main Unify and go to this macro knob 16, link parameters. I want to go to that drum groove to Unify to knob 16, because that's where I assigned it inside of that Unify layer. And now I can now automate. No hi-hats. Have hi-hats, okay? Furthermore, if we go here to this and look at MIDIBox some more, we also have the ability to say exclude. This does the opposite. This gives us back our 808 sub and gets rid of everything else, right? Because everything within the range of C2 to D#6 of this drum map is excluded. No longer is it included. So included is the kick, the tiny kick, snare, and hi-hats. Exclude means don't include those, include outside of that. So what this is really handy for is, let's say I want to get rid of the snare drum, because the snare drum's in the middle of the keyboard map. And typically you'd have to use 2 tracks, 2 different ranges to just keep the bass notes up until the snare, and then the hi-hats on the other side of the snare. Well, we can use exclude to do this with one MIDI file. So I just have to find where there's the snare. It's in the D range, and then bring this down. There. So I got the hi-hats, which are up in the top part of the keyboard, and the 2 kicks down below, but the snare in the middle has been excluded. okay? So that's what that's handy for. Include, exclude lets you limit the range of the keyboard map, especially useful for drum grooves. I could also use it for the violins. Now let's go to exclude, see what it sounds like. So it's excluding the notes from G4 up. So if you have a certain MIDI file and it gets way too squeaky, like the trumpets are playing way too high in their range, you can use this to exclude notes from a certain range, and now the notes above C6, bring this down, so you have it where you want it to be. So you could make MIDIBox be maybe a little bit more controlled, you know? So those are really handy for that. Finally, we have loop key. This is for if you want something to be one shot. A cool example of one shots is in Cloud City. I have all these one shot glisses and so forth where you choose one of these. It's a MIDI file. It's set to one shot. If I set it to loop, I even have one patch inside of DiscoverStation and the BPM split greener pastures, and it keeps playing. There's chord changes. If you hold down the note, right? If it changes to one shot, it changes all the MIDI boxes and stops. So if you look at what I'm doing, let's see if I can see it in real time. So if I go over here and shrink this, if we go to loop, it sets it to 4 bars and it's loop key. And it plays the whole thing. As I bring this up, this is going 3, 2, 1, and this goes to one shot. So now, then it stops. So you can use fun tricks like that. Very cool. And then velocity. Let me show you velocity. That's the last thing in MIDIBox. Okay, MIDIBox. This will allow us to scale and control the velocity. If you go to MIDIBox, you can right? You can change it this way. Now, there's 2 controls here. One is called scale, and what this does is it either exaggerates the soft notes and the hard notes. The other one is an offset, where it's actually just shifting everybody as they are. And you can use the 2 in conjunction. It's really, really handy to use them both together. If you set scale to be 0, let's say just 0, then it's now no velocity. If you make this be 200% and you bring this down, you can hear some exaggerations. We even have the curve control, so if you want, you can use this to exaggerate it even more. So between the velocity curve offset, which is multi-breakpoint, so if you want to make it really weird and do crazy things to velocity, so you can make it do things that there'd be no physical way to play. Do this and play it at 400%, you know. Crazy stuff. So these controls allow you to, I actually used this on the competitive edge, I believe, to get it to be a little bit more exaggerated in the soft to hard velocities. I brought down the velocity to find the right range, because as you bring up the scaling, it's going to bring everything to 127. Even though it's exaggerating, more of the range is being shot into 127, so you actually have to bring it down so that there's in-between ranges. one of those things just to experiment with, but you have the ability to assign them to knobs if you want to change this in real time, okay? Now, JitterBox has a number of different abilities. The main one that I've been showing probably the most is just the humanizing, where by bringing up this, here it is playing perfect timing. Everything's perfect timing-wise. As I bring this up, it's putting random timing on every event. So it's sloppy. But the right amount, this makes it sound great because it's no longer just machine gun shooting out notes. An orchestra would never play that. That sounds a lot more realistic. Right? So just that all by itself is a really cool thing MIDIBox can do. But it goes way, way, way deeper what we can do because we've added extra parameters to here. So if I go over here and I say duplicate, so I have 2 copies of this. MIDIBox on the second one, let's take it up a 5th so I can hear the difference, right? Let's make this one a little bit louder. And we're gonna play with JitterBox for a minute. Now, you can delay the time, make it really lazy, all over the place. And then turn it down a little bit. Just adds this busy element. Right? So there's that application, but it gets even more exciting than that because this can go from random timing to clock-based timing. So we could say quarter notes, and now it's an exact quarter note late. Let's have this start on the left side, this start on the right side. See, it's a quarter note. Now, if I want, I can jitter the timing of an absolute delayed 8th note. And I get the whole range so that it's... And that's not so useful, but if you go over here, we have quantize. And if you say just to simple, where's it at? Simple note times, then you can say the minimum of 8th notes. So now it's either quarter notes or 8th notes. And now we have random notes that are quantized. Put them together. And you have this random timing element. It's always a little bit different. Do it to drums, and you can have like percussionists that are like playing different things timing wise. And if you want, let's get back to JitterBox here. If you want, you can actually move these to be a little bit in and out so it gives it a little lazy. Right? And then down below here is pitch jitter. And we're going to add velocity jitter in the future so you can randomize velocity. Pitch, if you turn this on to 100%, it's just randomly playing. Every note that comes in gets spit to a different randomized amount. If you bring down the percentage, let's say like maybe 30%, now only certain notes, and let's do this. Just a little out, a little long hair here and there. Set smaller percentage. Right? There's a main note output. That's for if you're using like the shakers or something like that, and you've got a whole map of shakers and you want to stay mainly on one output note, the main shaker, and then randomize around that range. That's what these parameters here are for. to play with. So let's do this. Let's call up a drum group really quick to show you another example of that. Say drums. Okay. Let's duplicate this. And let's offset it by root so it plays at a different pitch. But it plays the same notes. Okay? That's what's cool with root versus offset. This would transpose the notes to be different drum samples. But let's keep them on the same so you can hear what happens when JitterBox takes off and does some fun stuff. So let's go here, say quarter notes. Hear that kick drum and stuff is at different times. Okay, one more example for the JitterBox to really show you. Let's go to a shaker. If we turn off MIDIBox, and I show you the keyboard, there's samples all the way up to this A sharp, B flat, right? So if I turn this on to play a pattern, let's turn off transpose and then go over here to JitterBox. I have this on because here's a normal pattern, right? By turning on pitch jitter, it will play different samples in that sample range at random times, but only between C1 and G2. So I gave it a limited range to pick for randomizing to work with. So it does things like that to give you a chance to take sample maps and a MIDI file and make it now have some random elements to it. So it's not the same MIDI file all the time. You do stuff like that. I was going to show you how to make your own MIDI file. This is a long video. Wow, guys. Okay, so let's go to chorus station, BPM strings. Let's go back to competitive edge. And I'll show you real quickly how to make a MIDI file. And then maybe we'll get more complex. So here is competitive edge. Right? If I go over here and bypass MIDIBox, now I'm just playing it on the keyboard. I'm going to go over to Logic, and I'm going to set it up to record. And I just have to say record. So I made a simple sequence, 3 octaves of C. And I want to go da-da-dum. So let's shorten this note and duplicate another one right there. Okay. Now, I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to make another one where I have notes in it so you can see what happens when you have notes. So, all right. 3, 4. So I have both one with melody and one without it. So let's go, this is the melody, 095 melody. And this is just C's. So we're gonna go 095, that's a tempo, so I know what the tempo was, and say just C's, okay? Now, because I have, let's do it this way. So I'm gonna go say copy. Now you can't see my desktop, so I'm gonna blur this. Paste the name and save to the desktop. So I'm saving each of these individually to the desktop, but I'm also gonna select both of these. And if I go up here to file and I go export selection as a MIDI file, I can say melody C stack, and save. So I have 3 MIDI files right here. Okay. I can get rid of these from inside of Logic. I don't need them anymore. And let's get Unify back over here. Now I'm going to turn back on MIDIBox. And I need to select the track. Okay, go to MIDIBox. Click to say I want to load something by clicking the blue text. Drag over just the C's and open. And because I use just C's, now if you play something and you're not playing C, go over here, and if you want to make sure you're playing in pitch, go over here to the little layer button, add instrument, empty instrument layer, and you'll hear a sine wave, but you can say that I played a different note. It'd be, well, that's not right. Set. Just move the root until you, okay? And then option click, or click here and say delete layer, and it's gone. Right? That's pretty cool. I mean, it's amazing what a simple MIDI file can do. Now, if I change this by hitting plus to be melody MIDI, now I play one note. Now, if I try to do the big chords and stuff, so if we go over here instead and we say stack, let's load the stack in. Now we have both, and we can choose between just the C's and the melody. And we could modulate that. Go over here to the knobs, to the second page, because there's 4 pages of knobs. Go to number 16 or whatever number you want, link parameters, go instrument, number 1, MIDI effect, MIDIBox, and track number is the first option up here. So we could say track number, let's pop that up, make sure that we have it set so we can change between the two. Let's go to 15, option click to do the quick call up without going through the steps. It's a shortcut to get this open. Go MIDIBox and let's go velocity offset. And so now we'd be able to play and change. So this way you could have it play the weird melody. Then when you come to a different chord, so you could do things like that. Pretty cool. There's so much room to expand on what we're developing here. So we're just starting. There's more to do. But that's how you make your own MIDI files. It's how you make your own MIDI stack. You can assign a knob to change in real time. And these, as you can see, don't have a MIDI CC assigned to them. So all I need to do is right click and say MIDI learn, move a knob on my controller. I just assigned it to CC5. So now, and I could assign MIDI learn to this here. So now I have both working. So let's say velocity. So now, So the possibilities are endless. Hopefully this helps you. It's a deep ocean, but it's fun to swim around in it. And you can start simple with just a simple MIDI file. Go from there, okay? Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.